Ladies and gentlemen, it is the end of the year, and you might be thinking about next year, the new projects you want to tackle, and the new skills you want to learn. At some point, most woodworkers take up wood turning. And why wouldn't you? Turning is fun, quick, and useful. You can make gifts, tool handles, furniture parts, and even artistic hollow forms on a relatively inexpensive lathe. Turning looks difficult, but it's actually easy. Most people teach themselves. I taught myself. From books and videos. The craft of turning is not complicated. But the equipment? That is actually really complicated. And we are in the middle of the holidays. Everybody is stressed out and exhausted. So how about today we just take the whole thing down and have a really mellow video learning about the basics of turning. We'll get a lathe, we'll learn all the parts, set up a little turning area, but we won't turn anything. In fact, we won't even turn the machine on. Sounds exciting, right? Before we do anything else, we need a machine. This is the cheapest starter lathe I've ever seen. It goes for under $200, and it's pretty popular, but you still shouldn't buy it. This lathe will get you started, but you'll outgrow it almost instantly, and you'll be frustrated with a limited choice of accessories. Let's get into the details. Any lathe has a capacity. What size wood can you turn on it? Capacity is just two numbers. The swing is this distance times 2. So if this lathe has 6 inches from the spindle to the bed, then the swing is 12 inches, and you can work with wood up to 12 inches in diameter. The other number that matters is the distance between centers, and that tells you how long your piece of wood can be. Consider a basic kitchen chair. This one has turned legs, and making furniture parts on a lathe is fast and efficient, but those legs are 17 inches long. So any lathe that won't handle at least that length can't do any furniture work. Let's go back to our little starter lathe. This lathe has only 12 inches between centers, so it can't handle furniture work. A lathe this size will do pens, ornaments, bottle stoppers, and small bowls, but that's it. When you're buying a lathe, size matters, but you also have to think about tools, accessories, and compatibility. For instance, a lot of lathe accessories come attached to tapers, literally just a tapered cone of metal, and then there's a matching taper in the headstock and in the tailstock. When I take this tapered accessory and put it into my tapered headstock, those two tapers lock together and give an incredible hold. I barely put this thing in, and I can't get it out without using a tool. Tapers are very effective, and they're also standardized. They use the Morse taper system, and that has sizes from 0 all the way through 4. The little lathe we just looked at uses Morse taper 1 or MT1 sizes, and that's a really uncommon size for wood lathes. That means you're going to have a tough time finding accessories for it, and any accessories you do buy aren't going to be compatible with larger machines. A much more common size is Morse taper 2 or MT2, and you find that on almost all larger lathes. So you really want to start with a lathe that has that MT2 specification. That way, any accessories that you buy will also work with a larger machine. Now, there's a similar thing going on with this threaded spindle right here. There's a lot of accessories like chucks and faceplates that thread right on there. And of course, there are a million different thread sizes and pitches, but the most common one is 1 inch by 8 threads per inch, 1 by 8 TPI. You find that on a lot of lathes, and even when you don't find it, there are inexpensive adapters that all work with that 1 by 8 TPI size. This lathe comes with that 1 by 8 size, so I can use it with almost any accessory. Anything I buy for this lathe will work with a better machine down the road. Here's the lathe I actually bought for this video. It looks a lot like the other one, but it has 12 inches of swing, 20 inches between centers, a more powerful motor, and it takes the industry standard MT2 tapers. The accessories we buy for this lathe will still work in almost any larger lathe, so we can upgrade without buying a bunch of new stuff. This machine still comes in at under $300, and you won't outgrow it nearly as fast. Picking your machine takes a bit of research, but once you get it home, there is a lot of stuff in the box. Let's go through all the pieces and understand what everything does. This thing came in a big styrofoam clamshell. No damage, no problems. I had help getting the box up onto my workbench, and I wasn't about to try lifting the machine out on my own. Cutting the end of the box and sliding it out was much safer. Then, it's pretty easy to tip the machine up and get rid of the rest of the packaging. Your lathe will come slathered in rust-preventing goop, so a thorough degreasing with mineral spirits is essential. Use one wet rag to work off the junk and follow up with a dry rag to clean up. While you're at it, this is a great time to learn all the parts of the machine. Wood lathes might look different, but they all have the same basic parts. On the left is the headstock, which houses the spindle. The motor turns the spindle, and that spins the work. The headstock usually has the switch and any speed controls. This thing is the tool rest, which sits on the ways. You might also hear this called the bed. Both terms are correct. Finally, you have the tailstock. This holds the other end of your work, or you use it for operations like drilling. You don't always need the tailstock, and it slides back and forth on the ways to fit different projects. Any lathe also comes with an intimidating pile of accessories. But don't worry, we'll explain all of them right now. This is called the live center. It goes in the tailstock and allows your piece to be held at the back end with no friction or heat buildup. This is your spur center. It pops into your headstock and grips pieces of wood to spin them. Both of these parts will need to be degreased. This is your knockout bar. You stick it in your headstock to knock out any accessories that use a taper. A gentle tap usually does it. You get one big wrench and a pair of hex keys, and there's also a plastic accessory holder, which looks cheap and stupid. There's actually one more accessory on this machine, but you might not know it because it's kind of hidden. See this? It's a faceplate, and it holds larger items like bowls. You might think it's part of the lathe, but it's not. It comes off. You just, oh, right, you need a wrench, and then you, You know, you're supposed to have 2 wrenches for this. Wait a second. The breakout bar is the second wrench. It pops right into this little hole, and it comes right off. So, here's the faceplate. You can see it's got 4 screw holes on it. You can take a chunk of wood, screw it directly to the faceplate, then take the whole thing over to the lathe and thread it on to the spindle and immediately start turning. Faceplates are great and kind of underappreciated. I know a lot of turners who don't use these very much, but no moving parts, kind of idiot-proof. We'll do a couple videos just on these. Anyway, you probably think that it's time to start turning right now, but not quite yet. First, we need a good space for turning, and we need a safe setup for the machine. Don't get intimidated. You're probably not going to have to spend any money. I'm going to throw together a turning setup just from random junk I already have in the shop. Here's a corner of the shop that you don't often see, and a pair of metal sawhorses. A friend of mine gave these to me because he was going to throw them away. Then we'll add a cabinet door, which came out of the trash. I'm going to screw that down to my sawhorses. They are made from steel, so they're heavy enough, but lots of people throw sandbags or other weights on their lathe stands to fight vibration. Now, the lathe comes with these plastic feet, but the instructions specifically say not to use the lathe without bolting it down and using some rubber spacers to absorb vibration. Of course, the lathe doesn't include either bolts or rubber spacers, so you're on your own with that. I had some scrap silicone mat, and it was pretty easy to cut a few little squares of that. Once they're in place, I just drill straight through the spacers, put a pilot hole in my base, and then add a plain old screw and washer. Now, I admit, I thought this plastic tool holder was totally stupid, but I thought I'd try it out, and once I had it bolted on and loaded up with all the accessories, it really seemed like a thoughtful addition. I usually keep all of this junk in a drawer next to my other lathe, and I'm always losing stuff. This is pretty organized. Now, all this stuff around my lathe is going to get covered with chips and dust as soon as I start turning. Using a lathe is messy, but you can avoid a lot of that by hanging up a couple of drop cloths. I'm just tacking some old sheets to the floor joists. This is perfect for the temporary space I'm creating, but you could do something more permanent with plastic sheeting. As time goes on, you can add dust collection and an air filter. There are lots of ways to make turning cleaner and healthier, but these old sheets will help a lot. That probably seems like a lot of work without any actual turning, but you need to do a little bit of prep. Now, even that very basic introduction probably seemed like a lot of information, but there's a lot of stuff you really need to learn before you start wood turning. If for no other reason than The machine is dangerous, honestly. If you do something stupid and a piece comes off the lathe, it can come back and hit you. It's happened to me. I caught a piece in the forehead a couple years ago, and I had to go to the hospital and get checked out for a concussion. And that's why I now only turn stuff using a face shield. This is a good one that would have prevented the accident that I had. It's inexpensive. I will link to it down in the description. The other thing you really need is a decent respirator. The dust and chips that come off your lathe are not good for your lungs. I don't turn anything without a respirator. I will link to this one down in the description as well. In the coming year, I'm going to make a bunch more videos about turning. I'm going to break it down into nice little segments so you can get into it slowly and so it's less intimidating. I'll do a bunch of videos in 2022. Now, you might want to get a jump start on that. Let me recommend my first book. It's called 1 Week to Woodturning, and today I am releasing the revised edition. We went through the whole thing, cleaned it up, fixed a few mistakes, updated a few things for new technology, retypeset it to make it look nicer, and updated a lot of the images with more professional ones. It's just a revision, not a whole new edition, so don't buy the book again if you already have it. But if you don't have it yet, I think 1 Week to Woodturning is the best introduction to the equipment of turning that you can find anywhere. You can grab it as a Kindle ebook from Amazon, or starting today, you can go to rexkrueger.com/store and download the exact same book as a PDF. No digital rights management, no limitations of any kind, just a simple file that you can download and read on any device. And while you're at my store, you might notice that all of my plans are 50% off. Everything is half off until the holidays, including last week's video, which was my quick stack workbench. We've been working on this design for months. It is a modular knockdown bench that you can take apart or put back together in minutes. It's easy to transport, and it's a fully featured, complete woodworking bench that you can build for under $300. And even those plans are on sale right now. You can check out last week's video to learn all about that bench and see the plans and the course. We have a course. It's great. It's almost 2 hours long and it's very affordable. All sorts of stuff in last week's video. And before I go, I have to thank my patrons on Patreon. This is usually the place where I have a whole pitch where I'm like, be a patron and get stuff, and I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna say thank you. 2021 was another difficult but amazing year for this channel. All kinds of growth and new opportunities, and so many things would not have happened without my patrons. I mean, for this video, I bought a lathe that I do not need. I already have a lathe. I have a bigger lathe. I did not need to buy the lathe that I bought for this video. But I got it, and I paid full retail for it just so I can make a series of videos to help people learn how to turn. And I couldn't do stuff like that without my patrons. They make this stuff possible. So thank you so much. To everybody else, me and my whole team, we wish you a safe, happy holidays. We're going to see you in the new year. We have tons of great stuff planned. We can't wait. Thanks so much for watching.